Are you the new ward, Kara?
You didn't change.
Same number, but I
Same.
think most of the people are different.
Yeah. Did you change?
Yeah, we're in the 11th.
11? Oh, good for you.
We're in the first ward.
11th.
First.
Are you ready?
First
Crazy.
ward.
Okay, you guys,
So weird.
we want to call this meeting to order. We have an agenda in front of us. Any additions or deletions from anybody? If not, we need a motion to accept this agenda. Counselor Fromm, all in favor? Okay, delegations, we have Chief Holt here present, he's gonna be talking to us, we welcome Chief Holt. We usually have our delegations talk for about 10 minutes, that's okay?
That's gonna be tough, but I'll try. I usually go about 30. Are we ready?
Okay, go ahead, Doug.
Well, it's good to be here. Haven't been to council meeting for a few years. It was a habit for about 12 and I don't miss it. I got a call from, I think it was it Curtis or Abe? And asked me if I'd come talk a little bit about this AHS consolidation and transition. I got an email from Lethbridge Dispatch on August the 7th, and it's very short, I'll just read it to you. It says, as announced earlier this week, AHS will be looking to consolidate their EMS dispatch centers and discontinue their contracts with 4 satellite centers, Lethbridge, Red Deer, Calgary, and Wood Buffalo. We were given 180 days notice, which means the contracts would end January 31st, 2021. The mayors of these municipalities are attempting to have the decision reviewed and changed and will continue to bring forward their concerns on the matter. So what I've been asked to talk about is how this would affect us. And dispatch is very, very essential for us. It's our umbilical cord when we're dispatched. Addresses are absolutely essential. The fact that they know our department, that they know basically how many personnel we have, the kind of training we have, the kind of tools and equipment we have. So it's very important. Another important thing is that they know our area, because sometimes we get wrong addresses, sometimes people are lost, sometimes they're confused, sometimes they've been in an accident, they don't know where they are. Or on a lake, in rivers, we've been to everything, and so it's essential that dispatch has a relationship with us and understands us and we understand them. And because we talk to them so often, you do get a fairly good communication with them and an understanding of how they work and they get an understanding of how we work. Some of my concerns and the concerns of people in our department are, first of all, efficiency. If there's like for example, we had a bad MVC motor vehicle collision on the weekend, and the call, a lot of times when people call 911, the call would go to ambulance. So in this case, if they're located out of Calgary now instead of Lethbridge, the call would go there, and then after they talk about it, look at it, or if the ambulance requests police and fire, then that call would have to come back to the Lethbridge Center or the dispatch center and ours is Lethbridge, of course. So there's a loss of time, and every time that message is relayed, you can lose information. You can lose all kinds of very important facts and locations and what's going on, and we've seen that happen even when we're getting dispatched out of one center, and they just dispatch ambulance, and then we're needed, and then police are needed. Sometimes it takes a half an hour for the police to get there. Sometimes it takes, depending on where the ambulance is, sometimes it takes a lot of time for that. And right now to be dispatched where all the dispatchers are sitting in one room talking, it's just way more efficient. It's to lose that, I can't imagine losing that and having fire come out of Lethbridge and ambulance coming out of Calgary. I can't see how that could make anybody better. The local knowledge I've talked about a little bit, knowing the area, knowing if the people that are looking for help are in an area that they can describe something, a lake, a canal, a river. It's so important that people can pick up on little things like that, because we've searched for hours before trying to find people and couldn't find them, and finally did. But it's some little clue like that'll give it to you, and so a knowledge of the area and the location is very important. They have a lot of great tools now. Working with Lethbridge, they have what they call a CAD system, and that's a computer-aided dispatch, and they've offered us some real good services with that. There's some real good apps that we can use on our phones, and that we would work with them. And some of the things we put in there are like names of farms, like we could say Milford Colony or OK Colony or the Night Ranch or the Milk River, the Milk River Reservoir. There's a lot of things that you can put into that CAD system, and that would help us. They also have a lot of other tools like mapping, locating, GPS, and we work closely with Lethbridge on those kind of tools. Another thing that that always comes to my mind as they talk about centralization and moving on to one center for all of southern Alberta instead of four, is if you had a disaster, if you had say a tornado hit Calgary and it took the towers down, and you lost communication, where would you be?
That's a good point.
Right now, we're not a lot different from a lot of departments are like us. They're unique in the way that they communicate. Right now, we have a VHS system that works off of Temple Hill. We have two towers up there. Us and Sterling are the only two departments that work off that, so it's very nice. The channels are always available, and it's line of sight like most of the stuff. But from here to the Lethbridge to the Milk River Ridge, it's very good. As soon as you get over the other side of the ridge, then communication is very poor, and even a CAD system or the new AFRAC system that the police are using and the ambulance, and we've got a couple of radios, but even that won't work up there because there's just not enough towers. But it is a huge concern that AHS thinks that they have enough control, and maybe they do have enough power and control, that they can make decisions like this without reaching out to municipalities and governments that are elected for at least some information and some guidelines, and before ultimately making a transition or announcing that they're making a transition. Huge concern. And I don't want to talk too long about AHS, but we've had a lot of problems trying to work with them, and with some of the agreements that we've had with them. We're still doing medical first response, so we're still covering for them. Their ambulances are out of Raymond a lot, and so we get called. That won't change. Those calls will still come out of Lethbridge Dispatch, even after the change. But
So I don't know, Doug, if you saw the other part of our correspondence here for us. The AUMA had a statement there, and they're frustrated too. They says we need more information about the impact of this consolidation on response times, and they're also frustrated by the lack of no consultation with municipalities, or with anybody. They just something they did. So it's something, I'm glad you're aware of it, and now we're aware of it. We can be trying to reach out and maybe have a letter written that we can send to the different ministers, trying to, especially the AHS, our health minister.
It affects a lot of communities. Like out of Lethbridge alone, there's probably 15 towns that they work with, and so it's a huge concern, and it affects a lot of people.
And I remember when they did it before, they moved it all to Red Deer. It didn't work, right? Correct?
Well, they were gonna move it to Red Deer, but I don't think it ever happened.
Okay.
Yeah, the last time that they were gonna do it, it never happened. So,
Well, maybe this will be similar. We're doing to save $6 million, and AHS wastes $6 million like that every time they turn around.
I'll give you a good example. In Raymond, when we had our own ambulance service, we were a society, we had a committee. I was on council, I sat on that committee, and I also drove ambulance. So it was a little, I got a real good look at what happened. Our budget, we had 3 ambulances, they were paid for. We had 18 personnel. We had EMT nurses, we had EMRs, we had 18 volunteers. Our budget was $250,000 a year. Now the budget's 10 times that much. So since AHS took over,
Inefficient.
I would say that the budget, our health budget, is 10 times more than it was when AHS took over. And are we getting better care? Well, I can tell you we're not.
Yeah.
I've told my family, don't wait for an ambulance. If you got an emergency, throw them in the car and take them to the hospital. Maybe that's good advice, maybe it's not, but that's what I'm gonna do.
Well, I think we can add this to our agenda, Curtis, and where I have a statement.
Yeah, we can get behind this effort from AUMA, because they're feeling the same way you are.
Well, who are these guys accountable to? I mean, who are they? We used to have to try to have meetings with them. We'd set up meetings and they'd go, and Scott and I'd go and we'd talk, and they'd give us answers, and nothing would ever come of it. And finally Scott got to the point where he said, if you got information from us, email it to us. We're not having any more meetings. So it was very frustrating, and a lot of times you don't know who you're dealing with. And we had problems, and because in those days we had a contract, and they'd send us to talk to somebody about a contract and about how we were fulfilling our contract, and if there was a problem, they'd always send you to another guy. There was always another guy to go see, another, and there just wasn't any accountability.
So many layers on their onion, it's not funny. It's baffling.
It's baffling, and it affects everybody in Alberta. It's a huge cost, and it's I used to tell them it was all about money. When we used to have our meetings, I get frustrated with them and say, well, you want our volunteers to do nothing but transfers, and you guys want to do the emergency calls because it's all about money. Because finally they got to the point where they said, well, you guys can respond, but you can't transport. Well, that's where you do the billing, is through the transportation. So we got frustrated, and then they ended up firing us and taking us right out of it. But we've got EMTs in town that make over $100,000 a year. And it seems like they're picking and choosing the calls that they go on, and they'll call us if there's a call that's tough, a Delta call, for example, and that's a bad call. They always call for MFR, so our guys can go and do the lifting and do a lot of the stuff that's tough to do. And we're subsidizing them, and I told them, I talked to the head guy, and I says, since we're doing the work and you guys are billing, you're and you're paying your employees well, our guys that are firemen, that are going and taking these calls, we'd like to pay them an hourly wage. We only want to pay them $30 an hour, which is, if you offer them $30 an hour, that would be a huge insult. But they said, no, we don't pay for medical first response. So here we are doing their job when they're not available.
Wow.
The job that they guaranteed they would do, that they're not doing, but they won't pay medical first response volunteers. So we're paying them out of our fire budget that's coming out of our town budget, and with COVID, there hasn't been a lot of calls. They haven't asked for a lot of medical first responders, but a few. But yeah, that's something we're dealing with. But we keep sending them the bills, and we keep adding on interest.
And we keep bringing it up.
Great.
When we go to the ministers, we bring it up, or when we
Yeah.
have them come in here, we talk to them about it. So
Yeah.
at least a half a dozen times we brought it up.
And you know, Doug, that's only half the story, because I've talked to, I'll bet you, at least 4 people,
Yeah,
and I'm trying not to exaggerate anymore in my old age, at least 4 people, seriously, who would far rather have had you guys, your volunteers, respond
yeah.
when they need help
Yeah.
than they would the hired guns.
Well, our policy was totally different. Their policy is go and do as much as you can. Ours was grab and go, you know, get them to a higher level of care. We realized that, you know, we're not doctors. We're here to safely splint you or whatever it takes and put you on a board and get you to the hospital. And the faster we can do that, the better it is for everybody. And there was a lot of times, like when we ran our own business, that there was people in town, you know, that were, I guess you'd call them hardship cases. They couldn't afford to pay the bill. They didn't have insurance. We just forgave it.
Well, we know you do a great work in the town, and we really appreciate you and your the firemen, what you do.
Well, we appreciate that.
And this is something that I'm glad it's been brought to our attention, and I'm happy that you came in and talked to us, because we need to be doing our part on the political part scene to try to get this corrected too. So
Absolutely, that's the tough part.
yeah, and we will do that. We'll make a motion here when we get down on the agenda to it. Well, thank you very much
Okay,
for coming.
thank you.
Any questions for Doug from you guys?
Any questions, anything? We have a good committee that, we have a couple of counselors that come to our meetings. We don't have a huge amount of meetings. Abe does a great job on there, and we have a good relationship with the county. As far as fire goes, it's really good. Their help with the budget and everything is fantastic.
Yeah, that's great.
That's awesome.
Yep, it is.
Well, your minutes were sure short this month. You have a short meeting?
Which one?
The minutes that we got in our packet today. From your
Oh,
last
we didn't
meeting.
even have a meeting.
Oh, didn't you?
They're
Oh.
fake minutes, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay, we have the minutes in front of us. 4.1, approval of council minutes. Anybody have any questions or concerns or see errors or omissions in the council minutes?
I made one change a couple minutes ago to resolution 6.5. It's more clear, I think, and concise this way. It was a little sloppily put together on the initial attachment you had, so I just changed that.
This is on the minutes,
Yeah.
6.5.
Yeah, the motion for the committee members for the air ambulance landing site.
Oh, okay. Okay, I can't see any problem with it.
And it should also have the counselors who were appointed to that committee on there.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, where did that go?
Yep,
It
that
was on there once.
disappeared.
Disappeared.
Apologies.
Okay, I see.
So we'll just amend that,
Okay.
to get those names in there.
Okay, great.
I'll move the minutes for August 4th.
Counselor Harker moves the minutes. Any other discussion? All in favor? Okay. You have the council committee minutes. Any questions on this? Oh, by the way, Councilor Price, welcome to our meeting.
I've been here for a while. No, I was a couple minutes late. I apologize.
No, that's fine. I just never got to say anything to you.
That's okay. And I'll move that we accept the committee minutes.
Good.
Anything else?
Great. Any discussion on this? Then all in favor? Good. Financial report. Accounts payable.
couple of questions, I'm just trying to find them.
Find them.
Okay, so the 1565. So are we hiring outside custodial work? I'm just,
Yeah, we have a contract set up for the community center and for the
Oh, okay.
RCMP building. And they
okay,
clean
so
them
we
up.
don't have what we, is this new?
Nope,
or is
this
it-
has been in since the end of 2019, middle to end of
Oh,
2019.
okay, so this is not new, okay.
Sorry.
And my other question was about the sidewalks at the school. So does the town pay for the sidewalks at the school?
Yes,
Really? So was that part of our budget? Did we?
yes. Yeah, we set aside.
So that was part of our sidewalk budget for this year?
Yeah, we had
Wow,
$60,000 set aside for $73,000 set aside for sidewalk replacements this year. So we did the ramps across from Burger Baron on Highway 52 and 845 or Broadway, sorry.
yeah,
And then the stretches along the school that you can see being done now. And then there's a couple of
Yeah.
odd cases where we just replaced the sidewalk here or there.
did I miss that? Did we know we were gonna do this?
Mhm.
The schools?
Yep.
I didn't know, they were that bad, but anyways. okay.
Anybody else have any questions?
Oh, the 1624, I had a question.
Okay.
That's MDC, what's that?
That is,
Is that training for,
yeah, that's probably, the pepper bowl, the new, form of pepper spray that they,
oh,
that they have. It might be miscoded.
so did they have to go somewhere, or like, is that to pay the instructor, or?
The training, I believe, was done in Raymond, but it's the cost for the equipment and the instruction.
Oh, okay, okay, it just seemed like, okay,
Okay.
great.
Anyone else?
I'll move accounts payable.
Counselor Capiters moves accounts payable. Moves the motion. I'll call for the vote then. All in favor? Okay, good. That's unanimous. Items for discussion. 6.1, we have bylaw 1092-20. This
Can I
is
ask one more question
Sure.
about the July reconciliation, the Go West marketing, $15,750? Do we know
Sure.
what Go marketing is?
Do you have an answer for that?
Go marketing?
That's the other half of the digital display signs.
Okay, great,
Okay, good.
good to know, thanks.
Okay, we're back to 6.1, bylaw 1092-20. We talked about this, a rescinding bylaw. Everybody understand what's going on here?
Yes.
We need a motion for first reading. Councillor Fromm makes that motion. Any discussion on this? And I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Good. Okay,
Didn't even have time to open bylaw. I like that.
6.2, the bylaw enforcement officer reading. That's 24-2020. RFD bylaw 1093-20.
Okay, so that's the wrong, this has been updated. This unfortunately is not their correct attachment. I apologize for that.
So let's just bring it back.
Okay,
Just bump it back 2 weeks.
okay.
So what are you doing?
So it wasn't the right one?
It's been updated, see all the X's? It's been updated, but this is the outdated version. This is the one from the agenda last week.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh,
So
okay.
we can just bring, there's no pressing need for that one.
Yeah,
Can
let's
you bring it
just
back in 2 weeks?
Yep,
Okay, great.
Okay. 6.3 then, the animals regulations bylaw amendment, 25-2020. 970-10, is this one correct?
This one is correct.
Okay,
However, in looking at the map, there are a couple of properties that I need to point out. In communicating with our GIS people, they included a couple of properties that should not have been included in the zone 2. And I'll just move over them with my cursor. But they weren't part of the old bylaw, and so they shouldn't be included in zone 2 in the new one. And it is this property here, and these two properties here.
I can't see where
Right
you
at the
are.
top left.
Yep, northwest,
Oh, I see where you are.
300 west and 400 north, so these should not be in there.
So they should be in zone 1.
Yes, that's correct. And they were that way on the previous map.
Okay.
And then down here, these properties here on 300 north and 300 west, these ones right here.
Okay. So just a tiny little change.
Yeah, I was really confused because
can you see that?
I just wanted to see what was different from the last one.
You from your
and I
homes,
couldn't
can you see
tell
that, you
what was
councillors?
different.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
Hey,
Yes,
We can see it,
Crossing area
yes.
And the
could you go down on that map, please?
pardon,
the cobblestone area used to be all in green, but now where it's inhabited, that's all.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, that
But
blue one,
I knew that, but I wonder if there was any other ones that I
I thought we
missed.
took care of that one, that property was sold. The one on that's just off 300 west.
I never had a chance to double check on this one.
Well, we know it's sold, and so I just
Okay.
assumed that.
Then it should be gone. So we'll
Okay.
take that one off as well.
Which one is that?
Okay.
Oh,
blue
that,
one.
the blue one?
Bottom.
Okay,
Yeah, it definitely sold.
so when it sells, then it's done.
Yep,
Thanks, Nick.
thank you. And as you can see, the changes there.
So I knew cobblestone, but I just wondered, was there was nothing else major, just the
No.
one up there that you
And
said?
then we have, help me out with this one again, please, on the west of town, this new division.
Bridge crossing.
Bridge Crossing, used to be, the previous map, was
Was all,
not subdivided and it was green, and now it's subdivided
Okay.
and it's,
so that's
part of
changed
zone
too.
1, yep.
Okay, great. Awesome.
okay. Everybody understand?
Yeah.
This is first reading of this anyway, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I'll move first reading of the 970-10 animals regulations bylaw.
Okay, Joan reads, makes the motion for first reading. Any other discussion on this from anybody? Counselor Foss,
Mayor,
go ahead.
just one comment. I know we discussed this last week, some confusion about Stonegate and the history with this bylaw. And I still have questions. I know that our typical process is to do first reading and seek feedback. I just think I guess I'll just comment that I think it's important that we try to solicit some feedback in that neighborhood as best as we can. Just so that we're, I know that the administration updated us on what they were able to find, but I still have heard lots of chatter that folks understood it differently, so that's my only comment.
Okay, good.
But the fact that there has been no attempt to buy a permit to have an animal there, does that match the chatter you've heard, Councillor Foss? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know of anyone who's actually pulled the trigger on, and it sounds like the administration hasn't found anyone who's actually done it. But I've talked to a few people who think that they, or thought that they could.
Okay.
And I don't know where that comes from, but I'm inclined to vote in favor of first reading, but I do think feedback is important on this one.
Yeah, it would be good, just to reach out for sure.
Yeah, it's just because originally, I know, because my sister was one of the ones who was gonna bought one of those lots and she sold it, and that was all the talk. It was gonna be a place, if you wanted a horse, you could have a horse, so that's probably where it started from and nobody's kind of caught up to it, right?
Or maybe they did and it ended and
So-
we don't know.
I don't know.
I think again, I think it's not to say anything different, we can definitely try and do some more research to support what Councillor Foss is saying, but the developers of Stonegate proposed a second subdivision south of the canal, and that was totally for acreage type housing with animals. And that was their intent for that subdivision, and that's how they were gonna market that. They said because it was different than what they were doing for Stonegate. And I believe the architectural controls do not specify that they're not allowed, or they don't say that they are, and that would trump this. So, I mean, in the end, I think it's perception is one thing, but it didn't trump the reality.
Yeah.
And whether it's a selling ploy that wasn't necessarily accurate, it's hard to tell at this point.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I don't think there would be an allowance for it, even if the people thought they could.
Yeah.
There you go. I can't imagine anyone in the neighborhood wanting their
No,
neighbor to have a
me neither.
horse or a cow.
No?
And I'm in favor of first reading too, but there is some chatter about chickens as well. You know, we're gonna visit that at our next policy meeting too, so there might be some more input, you know, the current policy says that no owner shall keep livestock within the town of Raymond, except when. And chickens is actually in the definition as livestock, so I think there'll be more input from people on this too.
Ron,
Yeah,
I actually had a guy call me, text me on Wednesday complaining about his neighbor who has a bunch of rabbits and chickens in town.
yeah, there are people who don't want them, but there are people who really do.
Yeah.
And I'm still hearing a rooster, you know, it doesn't bother me in the slightest, but I hear it, and it could bother somebody, you know.
That's just good country living.
Yeah. There are a lot of people in town who really want it,
yeah.
so, I mean,
So if we do first reading, then we can still change it on second reading.
Yeah.
sure.
Absolutely.
I'm in favor of first reading, just like Stuart said that he's in favor of first reading, but there's still some stuff that needs to be at least
Ironed out.
disseminated and discussed.
And we can still pass all readings of this bylaw and revisit the chicken issue separately, right? If that's, I think.
And sort of make an
I think-
amendment, you mean, an
Yeah,
amendment
I
to the
think-
bylaw?
For now, updating the map, and the zoning areas is an important thing.
That's the most important thing,
Yes,
isn't it?
Okay.
and I would suggest that in September, the bylaw and policy committee sit down and hash out what a chicken program can look like in Raymond. And then if it gets the blessing at that
Seriously,
meeting,
with buildings, restrictions and everything.
yeah, if it gets the blessing, then we can pass it on to the community engagement committee to solicit public feedback on the desire and the need for, or desirability of a chicken program in town.
Yeah, even if we went through second and third reading on this bylaw, it doesn't spell that the absolute death knell for chickens or anything else.
Absolutely not.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay, we need someone to make the motion, or did someone make it?
I think Joan
I
did.
did,
Joe did?
I made the motion, yeah.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Then I'll call the vote, all in favor? Okay, good. 6.4, the Waste Management Bylaw Amendment, 26-2020, Bylaw 976-10, so.
So, what we really wanna do is get that policy out of the bylaw, so we can change that policy, from time to time. We do have some changes we would like to the policy, but we'll leave those for when we've removed the policy from the bylaw. And so first reading right now, the only thing we're suggesting that we do is, amend the bylaw to remove the policy from it. And this is a standing policy on our policy books anyways.
So to remove appendix B.
That's correct.
Okay. I'll move that.
I'll move that.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Counselor Price?
I'll make that motion that we approve first reading of this bill, this policy, or this bylaw. There we go.
Okay. So we have that. Any other discussion on this?
Makes sense.
And all in favor? Okay, good. 6.5, the capital budget, 2020.
Sorry, just one, to just give you one update, there was some discussion last week when we were discussing the waste management bylaw regarding Freon as one of the user charges.
yeah.
And so just to give some context, currently the town's fee is $20 for Freon. DVS Environmental, which is a company out of Lethbridge, they charge us $35 to remove the Freon when they come and collect the appliances. The city of Lethbridge and Lethbridge County charge $35 each for Freon. And so the argument is that we don't want to be the cheap place that everyone from Lethbridge and area comes to dump their
Boy, no kidding.
refrigerators. So that's why the recommendation was to make it to 35.
Well, and it's silly to lose money on that. Why would you wanna lose money on that? I mean,
Okay,
And volume just makes you lose more money. I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
if everybody knows that it's way cheaper, like
Then
to
they
the tune of
then they bring it
$25
here.
cheaper. Yeah, good.
okay, let's move on. 6.5, the 2020 capital budget. Curtis, you wanna talk on this?
So, I guess the main point we're looking for right now is just to amend or get a motion to approve the column that has 2020 add as the heading. It's next to approve 2020. This is the 4 additional projects that we were gonna fund with the $201,000 that we had not yet allocated as part of our capital project plan for this year. The discussion at committee last week was that $53,636 of that portion would be spent on renovations to the senior center and the RCMP building. 18,000 would go towards the town's contribution to whatever solution we find with Raymond Elementary School for their $18,000 contribution to assist with pedestrian crossing and safety in that area. I have reached out to a local who's a transportation engineer at a Lethbridge firm to try and reach out to him to see if he's seen any products that would not be an immediate flash and walk, but would try to collect and group the kids across, like if no different than if you went to push the button at an intersection with a street light, you'd have to wait until the green walk sign or the white walk sign would start, and it would try to collect them in that sense. So he's seeing if there's anything on the market that would be suitable before we go down that path. So I'll bring you up to date on that further. $90,000 going towards the purchase of an additional sanding unit, because the existing one that we have is paper mache. It's the salt and the sand is basically eating the steel, and we won't get another year out of it. So we'll have a better option set aside for this year that has a bit more functionality as well for the staff. And then the final portion will to get the backup generator here at the town offices for our emergency operations center as part of our emergency management plan, so that if a disaster were to happen, the EOC could still operate, but also to purchase some additional defibrillators that we would have and have them located at various facilities around town that currently don't have them. So Councillor Peters?
I'm just gonna ask you, Chris, what would the timeline be with that sanding truck? Would that be something we have here, or is that something you order now and get mid-year next year?
I've made it. I took the liberty of telling Jesse to begin that process a week ago. So based on the discussion that was had, nothing's been ordered, but the process has been started, and the intent is to have it operational for this winter.
Good.
So that is, those 4 projects would accumulate the final $201,636 of 2020 money that had been allocated. So we're looking for a motion just to approve this capital plan based on what was presented in your discussions last week. And then the rest of the discussion will carry on with the next item on the agenda. But it
That's
will.
exactly the same as last week's discussion.
Yes, but keep this attachment up, Abe,
Sure.
because it'll be part of our next discussion.
Motion.
You make that motion? Councillor Fromm has just made that motion. Any discussion from anybody on this? We had pretty good discussion last week at committee. If not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Good. Okay, 6.6, Curtis.
Thank you for that. The municipal stimulus program is the province of Alberta's attempt at getting stimulus money into the economy and supporting municipalities. The town of Raymond received $504,124 of stimulus funding. There are some caveats on this funding that we discussed last week, and just to kind of reiterate, they have to be used for economic development type projects that will stimulate the economy. but also will help strengthen the economic opportunities within the region going forward. Tourism, or in some way help to reduce red tape. And so we reviewed the 2021 projects that are tentatively been on the agenda for consideration for 2020, and we weighed them against the criteria. Another major caveat is that the project has to be applied for by the October 1st of this year, otherwise you risk losing the funding. And it has to go to a project that either begins this year or begins in 2021, but the $504,000 must be spent by the end of 2021, otherwise it has to be returned to the province. And this is their attempt to ensure that as quickly as possible, stimulus funding is getting into the economy. So we weighed it against the different projects that are listed in your 2021 category column there. After some discussion internally, there was concerns about whether or not Highway 845's timeline would be sufficient for that. We are not in control of that project. That is being tendered completely by the province of Alberta. There are some utility relocates that have to occur by Fortis and ATCO, and the hope was that that would occur this year, along with TELUS and Shaw and Axia, and I'm not sure where that's at. And we're not totally sure what our total cost will be for the curb and gutter that we're paying for. And so we were a bit concerned to tie it to that project, just out of fear of losing the funding if something were to happen. The other project that potentially could be on there is the wastewater treatment system expansion. For background, since 2014, we've had an application into the Alberta Municipal Water Wastewater Partnership to expand the sewage lagoons and the lift station. Initially, this was a 52% funded town of Raymond portion, and the province would chip in 48 of the $8 million expense. We didn't like that number, so council allowed us to apply in 2018 to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. They have recently, and the attachments I think are included on this as correspondence, approved the town of Raymond's portion, so the federal government will be chipping in 3.2 million of that 8 million, and the province will be chipping in 2.66 million, and the town of Raymond's portion is 2.133 million. There is the opportunity where we could use that stimulus money on this. However, we have received an unsolicited proposal from a third party that we are vetting with different engineering firms that can effectively treat our wastewater for a substantially lower amount, to the tune of $3.5 million approximately. And with those savings, it puts the town in a much better fiscal position. It would also save the province and the federal government some money. But we do have to have a change to our code of practice. Now, what that means is that each year we're given a 21-day window that we can drain our sewage lagoon for the retention pond. That's the one that's had the cleanest water, basically after it's gone through its treatment process. So we collect it throughout the winter and throughout the year, and then at some point in the year we're able to discharge. By using this proposed third option, it would effectively reduce the need to expand the footprint of the lagoons, and it would install kind of a mechanized membrane filtration straddle plant that would effectively treat the water that permeate to a higher standard than what we're currently discharging. And if the Alberta environment would allow us to change our code of practice, we could effectively discharge water from April through September or October, basically as soon as water gets in that ditch. And because we're allowed to continually discharge, we don't need to spend the extra $4 million on building bigger reservoirs to retain it as our population grows. And so that in a nutshell is kind of the quandary we're in. We don't feel comfortable allocating it to that project either, just because if we are working through the Alberta Environment Code of Practice changes to see if we can gain approval for that, it will go past that October 1st deadline, and we don't want to put that at risk. And so what we're proposing is that the $504,124 council at some point between now and October 1st allocate it to one of the three proposals that the Sugar City Municipal Development Corporation is considering as their first project to get that stimulus money going into a project that clearly supports economic growth and development within the community and gets the development corporation up and running with seed capital so that they're not starting from a negative balance on their financial statements with interest payments and debt obligations. And so we'll leave that up to council. I know that Sugar City Municipal Development Corporation is coming back to council with a scoring matrix to weigh the 3 or 4 different proposals that have been presented. We're not looking for a decision tonight, but I just wanted to update council on our thought process thus far and see if there was any concerns with what we've kind of concluded to this point.
Concerns, this is where I wanna start clapping,
Me
seriously.
too, that sounds really good.
You know, I was wondering about that 504, 124 in that next column, you know, under Sugar City Development Corporation. Excellent explanation, I like that a lot. That's good news.
We wanna use it, we have that given to us, we wanna use it, so I mean,
Yeah.
that's wasted.
That
revenue.
sounds a lot more exciting than spending it on new sewer
Sewer
lagoons.
lagoons.
If there's a better way to do it, I mean, you know, and obviously it's proven, right, Curtis, because other municipalities have done it through this company, is that right?
So they're working, they have the town of Crossfields, they've had a pilot project in with Alberta Environment, I believe it's been approved, where they're gonna be putting it in and they're gonna test the water over the 2 years to see if it meets the standards that they're proposing. And then they'll be able to apply for a more permanent license. Their process is a little bit more complicated than ours because they're discharging directly into Fish Creek, which is a fishery. Ours is being discharged into a lateral Raymond Irrigation District drainage corridor. And there's an awful lot of distance between our lagoons and any fishery or standing body, constantly established body of water. And so the likelihood of contaminants, if it wasn't discharged if the quality of the water wasn't as high as that they're proposing, it's going to be higher than what we're currently discharging anyway. And so we feel that there's a high likelihood that an approval would be given, but until we have that in writing, we didn't feel comfortable
Yeah.
allocating it to that project.
Good,
Well,
that's great.
I guess we just keep our fingers crossed and hope
Mayor,
that works.
Councillor Foss. Go ahead.
just a comment on the question. And I'm open to considering the alternate proposal that Curtis is putting forward tonight. I also think it'd be worth looking back at we did a budget consultation last year where we sought input from the community on priorities, and I know we'd have to cross-reference that against the matrix of the types of projects that would be approved. But I think there may be value in, I know there's extra reporting requirements, but if there is, or if there are worthy projects that we've kind of kicked off the budget recently, I think there's value in looking back at that and just seeing which of those projects might fit back on, even if it means a little more reporting from us.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
And Councillor Foss, that's a accurate statement. There was 2 or 3 other proposals we were looking at. The one stipulation though was that it had to be a private contractor had to be hired to put in the infrastructure because they wanted to get it to a third party. And the budget scenarios that we were using for those projects were basically utilizing town crews to do a lot of that work to keep the costs down and then contracting out what we couldn't do in-house. And so that was where we potentially may have pushed that off. However, we could have a contracting firm come in and spend the $504,000, say on, for an example, Northwest Infrastructure or on 100 East, which is kind of what we've previously talked about. And you could do stretches. You just might not be able to get it to go as far. But it would be something done faster than what we're currently doing on our other pace. So that's a valid consideration as well, and actually should be considered.
Yeah,
So thank
good.
you, Councillor Foss.
Yeah. That was good you brought
In light
that
of the
up.
October 1st deadline too, so.
Yeah. So I'm sure we'll be having discussion on this next week, Curtis,
Yes, we'd like to.
at committee.
Correct.
Okay, so I guess stay tuned to that one. Any other discussion on this? Okay, we'll move to the 6.7, the ICF update.
Oh, Council Price.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Price, go ahead.
I missed the mic button, so I'm a little slow here. Just for clarification, that 504, 124 that you're allocating there, you got it down 3 times, it's really
Yeah.
only one allocation.
Can only be spent once.
Correct.
Yeah, it's that.
Yeah.
I think the
There's not
spreadsheet just totaled it, so.
$5 million being allocated here, it's just simply 500.
Yes, correct. Sorry, I could have changed the color, but I was just trying to emphasize that those were the projects that we were suggesting. But yes, 100%. That's correct. Just the one allocation.
Okay. Okay. So let's move to 6.7, the ICF update. So our meeting was supposed to happen yesterday. We received a letter from the County of Warner, and you saw their response. You had an opportunity to read it. I was a little disappointed. I really thought maybe we could meet and discuss some of the things, and maybe some of them, and then we knew it'd have to go to a mediator on, but obviously they don't wanna, they're not wanting to meet with us in that form, except for have our CAOs meet, so. Anyway, so yesterday morning I phoned Curtis and had him phone the CAO in County of Warner, and that's what they decided they would do. There's no use to have a meeting, or no need to have a meeting with their political counterpart.
So just to update, I wanted council to see the response letter first before it was public. So we'll bring it back to council for next council meeting, just so it can be added to the public record as correspondence. That's why it was locked. But just to update you, the CAO for the County of Warner, Sean Hathaway, has reached out to me, and he's drafting up an RFP for requests for proposals for mediators. And there'll be a list of, we'll see who submits their information, and we'll come up with a list of candidates that we'll vet and bring, I believe, to the different councils to kind of make that final consideration as to who they'd like to facilitate that, and we'll see where that goes.
Good. I think given the back and forth, that is the next logical step. I really do.
But I sure would like to have met
Not
with
getting
them
anywhere.
and discuss that, though. You know,
Mhm.
we could have done that with us, our two councils, but.
So
Anyway.
what you're saying is that there's no more discussion on the current numbers as they are, or any of the current progress, whatever that we've tried to make. They are adamant that it just goes to a mediator now rather than any more discussions at our committee level.
Well, they wanna have the CAOs meet and discuss it, but not with us, yes.
No, I believe the CAOs are going to just meet and come up with the RFP for the mediator, who the mediator will be, the successful candidate. I believe the councils will still have the ability to kind of select what their preferences are from those that we receive back of interested mediators. And then from there, we'll come up with who will be hired to mediate the different, the councils for the different communities through these issues. Meetings will then begin based on the content that's been presented, and the mediator's role is to try and help us come to a consensus in areas by, effectively calling out an unwillingness to cooperate or whatever they may see on either side, depending on their preference. And the municipal affairs states that like 90 or 98% of all mediations avoid arbitration. But there is the risk that if you can't come to an agreed upon consensus, that then arbitration is the next step. And the same process would happen. An RFP would go out for arbitrators probably, or one might be appointed actually, sorry. I have to review that a bit further. And we'll present our information. They'll present their information. It's kind of a quasi-judicial court. And the mediator or the arbitrator will establish whatever the terms will be. It's binding, and it's out of our hands at that point. And so it'll be based upon their preference, based on the information that's presented.
Is mediation a cost, a
Correct.
charge?
Yep.
How
It'll be a
much
cost.
is that, and who's paying for that?
We'll be both paying for that based upon
Split.
probably the assessment breakdown that's outlined in the provincial regulations, but there will be a cost for both.
But they talk about tone of letters, and I just want to point out two things that should be highlighted in this letter. I mean, in the very first paragraph, they say that they're disappointed in the tone of the letter, the lack of understanding of the overall concept of partnering for the betterment of our communities being demonstrated by the town of Raymond. And then they reiterate that in the last paragraph, saying that with the town of Raymond being so far out of line with the fiscal realities we're facing. Does anybody feel like that's a founded thing to say to us as a potential partner and as a potential opposite side on a mediation? dispute.
I think it's a really,
As far as tone of letters goes, I think they trumped
it's
us.
a really,
Yeah, for sure.
not a good thing to be saying in a letter, I don't think.
I'm glad you brought that up because I agree 100%.
I don't think we went even anywhere near approaching that tone. I really don't think we ever did, Curtis.
No.
So part of it will be tied, a part of the rationale, I believe some of the semblance for the response is tied into 6.8. And we'll
Yeah.
discuss that next and
And
kind of
that's
give you an update
reality,
on
but
that.
you know what? ICF, the legislation on ICFs came along a lot sooner than that did.
Correct.
That's it.
Our response to that is that the RMA, which is the Rural Municipalities Association, was very clear when the ICF terms were being negotiated that was not revenue sharing, it was cost sharing.
Yeah.
And this is a cost sharing argument. This has nothing to do with the revenue situations that they find themselves in. Our argument back would be
Exactly right.
as much as we are sympathetic, and our recommendation actually to get into 6.8 is that we support the county and the RMA's efforts to fight this downloading of obligations from industry onto municipalities, but they're two separate issues. And while it's no different than the enhanced policing costs or reduced cap operating grants or increased education expenses.
Exactly right. We've got increased costs since all of this came down the tube, just
Correct.
like they have, so.
The other interesting part is that they said that us acquiring money from them would increase their mills a certain amount. They just extrapolated it right into
To the
their-
tune of $500 a year, you know?
that they're gonna make, their residents pay, which seems a little odd to me, where they can do that, but we can't extrapolate that into the extra costs that we have because all these people in the county are using our facilities. So they've taken it and put it right into a cost that's gonna be charged to those county residents, but we can't do that. Like, we can't say, because all these people are using our facilities, it costs us
And
X
there
amount.
aren't very many people in the community of Raymond whose tax increase was $500 or less. There are so many in Raymond who got a bigger increase than that.
Exactly, so
Good point.
I'm just kind of interested in their process of thinking.
Well,
Doesn't seem very reasonable to
See,
me.
I'm disappointed they didn't want to go with us, the political councilors from each town. I mean, they're county and us. They just want to have the CAO do it. I think that's not very good of them either.
Mayor.
I understand where they're at. Councillor Foss, go ahead.
I just, one thing that stuck out to me is their restating of the purpose of the ICF, which I think is from my view, a fundamental misunderstanding of the intent of the entire thing. And, as I refer to what the province, just how they describe it, it's to ensure that neighboring municipalities are contributing to services that are provided that benefit their residents. And so I think we went into this with a sincere approach to say, what services do we provide? What services do you provide? And we were the only ones that really came forward with any offerings on that front to say, these are services that we feel your residents are using. And I think it's that basic fundamental misunderstanding of the intent of it that's put us here. But I think we're on the right side of it. I think we understand it correctly, and I fear that maybe they don't. And I hope that mediation comes out and sort of lands on the side where I think we're right, is that we provide services that benefit their residents, and so we should share in the cost of those.
And in negotiating terms, from the beginning, we have done this in good faith, seriously. And I think it's a little one-sided.
Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
just what Councilor Fromm just said, Councilor Fromm, it just seemed like there was like zero negotiation. With our platform, we came with our data, the county felt it prudent to shoot it down without providing necessary facts or counter offering something. So there was zero negotiating I felt on in this agreement. So to me, I text Curtis saying, why are we gonna, Mary, you might disagree with this, but I felt, why would we go back to the county and talk about nothing that isn't going to be done? That the only process we were at is to go to mediation, because we had suggested it in our letter. They came back and suggested it. there wasn't an opportunity for us to negotiate because it just wasn't happening.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I think they just wanted their CAO to do it. They didn't want to be actively doing it, eh?
Well,
But they weren't actually doing it before though, like it was
For
just.
sure, I agree with you.
They didn't want to work it. I think that Curtis, his team, along with our committee, put a lot of work into coming up with the costs of what those facilities take us to run. I think we had a good idea of what we were looking for and the data to support it. It just seemed like it was all one-sided. That was the frustrating part.
Yeah, it was.
Just one more thing I want to point out. In the first paragraph, they're saying that the whole purpose of the ICFs is to look at things and not, come to an equitable big picture. Last sentence on their first paragraph, and they say, either reduce service levels or contract out services to other organizations that have other methods of raising funds. Hello? What council, municipally or county side, wants to reduce services?
Yeah.
I don't get it. This is not, that's not what we do. We don't reduce services so that we can all, the bigger funding restraints come on us, so we just reduce the services. What's the point of that? Where's the progress in that?
Well,
Yeah, they said a few times that their mandate is to make sure that agricultural products get from the field to the warehouses or to the elevators. That's what they said, that's their mandate. So they didn't see the justification of why they should be paying for services that are not necessarily part of their mandate as to what they're supposed to do.
but, I mean, they're also, the county firmly believes that the library, senior center, and RCMP building have no need to be in these discussions. Like, don't.
The RCMP building really surprised me.
I mean,
because they service the county just as much as they do Raymond.
Exactly. I can't even imagine where they're, anyways. I don't know
Well,
what they're thinking.
they did make this statement, I hope I can rephrase it right, but they said that everything was great until the government put their nose into this.
Oh, yeah. Gee.
On their end.
I don't know one
Everything
single
hasn't
resident of the
been
town of
great
Raymond who would
for-
say everything's been great until the government put their nose into things.
But
The
that,
government's put their nose into things, and finally, it's going to be great.
Finally,
Maybe.
it's gonna
it's
be
gonna
great.
be- it's gonna be right.
Exactly.
it's gonna be fair.
I think
Finally.
this might cause some county residents to reflect on what their taxes are actually paying for, especially those along our fringe area.
Yeah. Anyway, our CAO has been taxed with this new priority. He knows it's a priority, and he's got lots of priorities, so, and he has to work his priorities out, right, Curtis?
It's job security, but yes, we'll try to triage them accordingly, so.
Thanks,
Okay,
Curtis.
I think we can move to 6.8. You wanna talk about this one?
Yeah, this kind of caught me by surprise. I had not heard anything about these discussions that happened earlier, and AUMA has had a webinar that they've got a presentation. When I do get that, I'll attach it as information, or I'll send it out to council, or both. But they had, and rightfully so, the province of Alberta's government has been very focused on kickstarting the economy, working with industry, especially the oil and gas sector, and the pivotal role that it plays in the province, to try and help it battle some of the geopolitical fundamental challenges it's facing. Some of these negotiations, though, got into the discussion of costs that industry is facing, specifically oil and gas, but it could be lumber mills or any kind of industry that's regulated as a linear assessment business. And they came up in these working groups that 4 models that they felt would reduce cost to industry on their linear assessments. And it basically talks about how quickly assets are depreciated, and thereby reducing the amount of taxable assessed value that largely the municipal districts and counties can use to tax. That will significantly reduce the revenue of the municipal districts and counties out of the get-go, which is a difficult thing for them to absorb into their budgets. And so this is where I believe the majority of the impetus for the counties kind of final comment in their letter to us previously that just talked about we don't have an understanding for the impacts that they're facing fiscally. They face as well enhanced policing costs, which have been downloaded to the province, which are new, increased education expenses, which are their share, and then anything else that may come. And so basically it's just changing the way that the assets are going to be depreciated, and depending on what scenario, A, B, C, or D, and I don't have that presentation yet. When I do get that, those scenarios will make sense. But it's basically saying the County of Warner will lose between 4 and 10% of its linear assessment revenue. Now, the County of Warner, and I haven't seen their numbers, but I don't believe they're as heavily impacted on a per dollar amount, but the impact it has on their finances is still going to be pretty significant. And this will then have unintended consequences on an urban municipality. So if it's based on if it's based on assessment, and their assessment is cut by a third, just as an example, the urbans in the province are going to have their education tax requisitions increased by a third to make up for that difference, unless the province says we're just going to fund that extra portion out of our revenues. We don't know how that's going to be translated down. Seniors requisitions, all these things that are based on assessment, there will be knockoff effects that will impact us. And so that will drive up our costs as well. And so supporting industry, I think, is something most people in the province would support, but doing it on the backs of municipalities that have to absorb the cost and download that cost to their residents in the form of tax increases is kind of a backhanded way of going against what the province of Alberta has been saying they've been trying to do all this time, which is to put more money in the hands of the pockets of Albertans. And so instead of bringing in other revenue generating options at the provincial level, they just seem content to download that down to the municipalities and have us tack it onto the tax bill and take the brunt of the frustration from the public versus the province. And so there's a couple of attachments there. The impact on the town of Raymond will be minimal. If you, for the second attachment there, that's an analysis that AUMA did for the town of Raymond. There's still an impact, but it's nothing close to what the municipal districts and counties will face. And so AUMA is actually recommending that we come out in full support of the Rural Municipalities Association opposing this change to assessment model. If the province wants to support oil and gas specifically, there's tax breaks that they can give directly to those industries, or reduced income taxes, or provide operating grants until such time that the economy turns around for them, versus a wholesale change to the way assessments have been done. That's the main argument. On the flip side, from an urban perspective, I think part of us, there is an argument that can be made from an urban perspective that the rural municipalities would disagree with, is that this is going to basically right the disparity of dramatically different mill rates that municipal districts and counties can offer their residents, because they're able to heavily lean on linear assessment, which by and large the counties have done nothing to actually acquire, except for the fact that they have massive geographic areas. There are impacts with industry, especially up north on their roads and other infrastructure, but for those of us in the south, there isn't as much impact and wear and tear, at least to my knowledge, on their infrastructure for ATCO lines, gas lines, linear, Fortis electrical lines, solar arrays that may be built in the air, wind farms. Once they're built, they're kind of heavy traffic isn't really on them anymore. It's mainly just servicing, versus oil and gas and logging industries where you have heavy trucks driving back and forth, getting product to market all the time. And so there's a catch-22 on either side, but in the end, we are very much supportive of the RMA's recommendation to oppose that and what AMA is recommending. And so if council's okay with that, we'd recommend a letter written in support. And I would actually encourage us, I mentioned to Sean, the CEO for County of Warner, that we would send that draft to them, just so that they would know what we were saying, and if they had any recommended changes, we could make those changes so that our messaging is consistent.
So, Curtis, aren't a lot of,
It's pretty magnanimous.
don't a lot of those counties up there that have a lot of money, don't they have a lot of money because of the taxation from those industries? I mean,
The vast majority of it is not direct taxation of the industry, it's the linear assessment. So
Okay.
it's the value of the assets that are there for them to conduct business, not necessarily
not
the business
necessarily
itself.
the taxation of those actual industries.
To my knowledge, correct.
Okay, that's what I wondered.
So, we should have we need a motion from someone. If someone would like to support
that.
RMA on this, to oppose this. Counselor From's making that motion. Everybody understand what we're doing? Okay. Any discussion on it? So he's gonna make up the letter, the motion, and then send that to Sean Hathaway, the CAO of the county of Warner, and see if it's in agreement. Is that what you said?
Yeah, would you like me to bring it back to you to review or just write it up and send it? Yeah, I'll get the mayor to sign it, obviously, but.
Yeah. I think write it up and send it.
Yeah, I do too. I just don't want Sean to be able to tell you what to write. I mean, I'd like to have you write it, not him. You know
No,
what I mean?
we'll make sure, we'll make sure that it's from an urban perspective, arguing the concerns that we have of the knockoff effects of this, but also indicate that this is kind of a wholesale change on the backs of municipalities that probably isn't appropriate in our perspective. And I think our perspective is just to make sure that we're hitting if certain points that need to be emphasized, but we can still make sure that it's still telling our perspective.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion on this? And all in favor? Okay, good. So one more thing, Chief Holt came in and talked to us about we should be supporting AUMA with their discussion, what their letter was about the AHS and the efficiency of you weren't here, Councillor Hagee, about the what was it about? The medical
Dispatching.
services correspondence, the dispatch. And so we need to have a motion for that too, or any discussion on this from anybody? Would you like to? I would like to see a motion being made to send a letter to AHS on this.
Yeah, I wasn't
Okay,
offended
hold
by
on.
that till he explained it all, so.
Go ahead, Councillor Price.
Well, I was just saying, I'd be happy to make that motion.
Okay,
So what exactly is Chief Holt? Like, what's his perspective on it?
well, number one, if you go to that letter from AUMA, it's basically the same thing.
He'd like the dispatching to be done as close to home as possible, and they're clawing it all back and just putting it all out of the big centers.
It says when you do that, there's an efficiency problem and there's a loss of time trying to get everything back. It's going to one main place up north, and it's not getting to where it is here. They don't know the area, they don't know the people, they don't know the. He says it's nice for our fire operation here to be able to know the people, and they know them, and they know what they can do and they're capable of, and they know the area. This just makes it so it's not as efficient.
It just seems like it's one step further away from what it should be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And after no
One
consultation
step
at all.
further away.
The only reason I ask is I talked to one of the EMS drivers in Raymond yesterday, and he said that this will have no effect on Raymond whatsoever. As far as the dispatching,
Well,
he
Doug-
said be very, very minimal.
Doug says you're right, cause it's coming from Lethbridge for the EMS, but not for the fire.
Oh, for the fire, okay.
Yeah, it's coming
Okay.
for, and the other.
I thought he was talking about EMS and fire.
It's both.
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be two different dispatching units for fire,
Okay.
EMS, police, and, the CPOs, and so there's,
So the EMS guy was right, saying it's not gonna affect them very much, but it could affect the fire.
and there won't be
According
the
to what Doug
ability,
told
okay.
us.
there won't be the ability for the seamless communication between entities, because there's different entities sending the messages to different departments.
He worries about things getting lost in translation and slowing things down, and
I was actually surprised that he told me that, like, I thought that he would,
And they didn't consult anyone either, and that's what AUMA is
Yeah.
upset about too. And I think you could send that to the Minister of Health and to AHS and CC it to AUMA, to Barry Morishito, so he knows we're supporting him in this. Anyone else? I can't remember, did we have a motion made? Was that Councilor Price made that motion?
yes.
Any other discussion on this? Then all in favor? Okay. We can move to committee reports. There's nothing written down on committee reports. Anybody wanna say anything?
I'll start. I actually had 2 meetings last week. The one was the communication one that Stuart is the chair of, and he can fill you in on that one. But I also had an Ag Society meeting, first one since February, and just a couple things that we discussed. They're in the process right now of putting a new roof on the Red Barn, like completely entire new roof. They are also discussing about doing some maintenance on the inside, as far as paint and sanding the floors and redoing the floors and stuff. They did talk about the things they usually do in the fall, the quill show, the craft sale, the turkey bingo, Aggie Days, and as of right now, everything's been canceled, and unless things change around, then they could have the turkey bingo, or if they have time to put it on, they will, if things turn around. There's a good discussion on that. They thought they could do the quilt show, but a lot of the ladies says, well, I'm not gonna hang a quilt to a whole bunch of people could be touching it as they go through, so they didn't think that'd be very successful. Same with the craft show. You can only let so many at a time, and they'd be on a time limit, so they just didn't think that'd be very pleasant for them. So, so everything's just been put on hold until further notice. And that was about all we discussed. Wasn't really much, but.
Anyone else wanna report anything? If not, then I guess we need to accept, Councillor Foss?
Mayor?
Yep, go ahead.
Sorry. I just was gonna speak to the Community Engagement Committee meeting. We did meet, the only thing on our agenda was to adapt the engagement plan for the slogan, which was what council directed us to do. And so we've COVID adapted it, and I expect we'll have some material coming out soon to sort of wrap up that engagement piece.
Okay, great. Okay, we'll look forward to hearing that at a committee meeting. So we need a motion to accept committee reports then.
I'll move.
Councillor Hagee, all in favor? So you have correspondence in front of you? Anything that anybody wants to talk about specifically? I think we did talk about we need to send some letters to Minister Panda and Minister Iverson and Minister Mandu, thanking them for those MSI infrastructure grants that have come our way. Curtis?
Okay.
It was interesting to note that Wednesday's the busiest day of the year for incidents.
Yeah.
Policing
Yeah.
reports. That shocked me.
People are bored on Wednesday or something.
That's why I call it hump day, I guess.
I think it'd be the weekends, eh?
Yeah.
It's weird.
So I need a motion to accept correspondence.
I'll move to accept correspondence.
Councillor Harker, all in favor? Okay. And I guess we need a motion to adjourn. Yes, Councillor Hagee,
Usually everyone else jumps at that.
I always wait for Joan to do that.
Councillor Hagee makes that motion, so all in favor? Okay, that's a short meeting, we don't have very
Wow,
many of
that was
them.
almost a record.
That was
Almost
fantastic.
a
Good
record.
job, Mayor.
Yeah.
Good job, everybody.